Hey, hi everyone. Today we're gonna discuss about the phase C in our lab three, and in this particular session, we're gonna discuss about the advanced web development, like that is the core web development. And these are my teammates, myself, Venkatramana, Prudvi, Avindra, Niharika, Siddharth, Gautam, and Kevin are my teammates. And welcome. Next slide. In this particular project, in this particular session, we have present three phases like the creating backend using C Sharp ASP.NET framework and modifying phase one, their backend to use the entity framework and add authentication to the both front end and backend. These are the three phases which we did in this particular project. When it comes to ASP.NET, the whole project in this we use the ASP.NET framework to develop the code, and we use the C Sharp language in order to develop the code in this ASP.NET framework. And for the backend database, we use the SQL. And .NET is a set of Microsoft software technologies for the connecting information, people, systems, and devices. And these are the important features about the ASP.NET. .NET is all about the creation, consumption, and delivery of the web services. Next slide. Yeah, this is like in .NET, you can create multiple applications for the desktop, web, cloud, mobile, gaming, IoT, and AI. If you want to create a web application for the desktop, we use like WPF, Windows Forms. And for the web, we use ASP.NET. And for the cloud, we use Azure. For the mobile, Xamarin, gaming, Unity. These are the different frameworks which are present in the .NET structure. And it is available for all the compatibility. It is compatible for all the devices like Windows, Mac, and everything. Next slide. When it comes to the C Sharp, C Sharp is a programming language which we use in this particular .NET structure in order to develop the code for our project. C Sharp programming language developed by Microsoft for developing customized tools and systems to meet their requirements. C Sharp language is widely used for Windows applications and web apps as well. If you want to start developing using C Sharp project, we need to have a Visual Studio from Microsoft as well as other tools such as SQL Server. Next slide. When it comes to the SQL Server, for this application, we use the SQL Server as a database. Here is a brief summary. Like the SQL Server is a relational database management system from Microsoft. The system is designed and built in to manage and store information. And in this particular SQL Server, we have created a database called IMDb, and we have created a table called movie to in order for sorting all movie related data. Gautam, can you open the database for us? Yeah, this is the database, and this is the query to create the database is called IMDb, and this is the query to create the table, and we will declare the flow values to the columns, and this is the dynamic allocation of the data to the project, and these are the data which we have uploaded to the SQL database, and IMDb is our database, and movie is our table, and this is our data. From here on, my friend will continue. Thank you.
Yeah, coming to our actual task. For this application, we moved the in-memory web API part, which we used in Angular, to the backend using C Sharp. So here we call the API from the newly created backend, and we can consume it in our front-end application. So for this purpose, we have two phases. First phase is we just created a normal web API project by using .NET Core 5.0 version, and we added a custom model in our code without using the DB context, because the DB context will be coming from the database only. So we used a JSON file in a constants folder, and we consume that JSON file. After that, the routing path is same for the both of the applications, and we use the Swagger application for testing our created web APIs from the backend side itself. After successfully creating the web APIs, we then integrate the developed web APIs into the Angular UI. So for phase one, we used a constant file that I can show in the code. So here we have a constant files. In this constant file, we created a new one. Here we added all our JSON data. So from here, for phase one, we used this data for creating the web APIs. Whereas for phase two, we created a database, and we consumed the data from the database, and we created the web API. So both of the things will be working fine, and we can demonstrate at the end of the presentation. Yep.
In this application, we had used the .NET Core Web Application. These are the steps to create a .NET Web application. First, we have to create a new project. While going to the new project, we will select the web application, and then we will we will give a name to the application that we have taken as AWD API Net Application. By in the fourth side, we will give the version that we have used for this application. In this application, we have used the 5.0 version. By going to the next slide. Yeah, in this is the slide for all the dependencies, which will give by default. Mainly, it will give the connected services, dependencies, properties, controllers, app setting.json, program.cs, weather forecast.cs. These are all the basic and the default features for this application. By going to the dependencies for the next slide. Dependencies is nothing but it is an object. It will take the objects from the inversion of control. That means we are giving the control to the for the application. We want to create some objects. So by using the inversion of control, it will automatically gives the objects that are required for the application. The primary way for adding the dependencies to a .NET library is by referring the NuGet packages in the application by going to the code. Yeah, in this we can see the dependencies in the right side corner. Dependencies. Yeah, these all are the dependencies for the frameworks, for the analyzers, for the we have different different dependencies. In the previous days, we have to use the jars. We have to download the jars and we have to add to the path by going after developing the frameworks for the .NET framework. We don't have to manually download the jars. It will automatically give all the dependencies for the application by going to the next slide. Properties. In the property section, we have the launch settings.json. In this application, we for running an application, there must be some settings that we will set in this launch settings.json. First, by going to the code. Yeah, here we will see. Mainly, for the purpose of this properties.json was we have to give the what is the server, what is the local host server that we are giving, what is the port number, and for the launch browsers, what are the environment. We are the development. We are developing a program, right? So we are giving as a development profile, and for the URL we have manually given in the third step that localhost 5001. Localhost 50. By going to the next slide. App settings.json. App setting.json is generally used to store the application configuration settings such as database connections, strings for any application scopes, generally variables such as in the for the other information also we can store in the app settings.json by going to the program.json. App setting.json. Yeah, in this app setting.json, we will give the logging information for the application. By going to the main thing in the was IDMB connection. We have taken for IDMB as the database. For that, we have to give a server, right? We are using the local host. For the database, we are using IDMB. Whenever all the requirements are fulfilled, it will go to it will execute the it will run in the website. By going to the next slide. Program.cs. .NET Core applications are we know that these are the console applications. Program.cs is the main entry point for the application. For running any programming language, we want some main method for the application. This programming.cs creates the application host. This is the main method for the entry point to the application. These files contains the app setting.json logging using create default builders. This is the main method for the application, and startup.cs through the web builder. By using the startup further helps that downloading the dependencies. We can download the dependencies by using the startup method. by going to the next slide. Startup.cs. Startup.cs file is the entry point for our application. In the previous slide, I had already told that it is the main point of the application. We will use the that program.cs extension over in the startup.cs. Mainly, we have 3 to 4 objects over here. First one, we will configure the application by using the startup configuration. For the configuration, we have to use the configurations. For configuration services, we will use some service collections. For the configure application, we want some builders and some environment. So in the picture, we will see that all the basic information regarding to that one. By going to the next slide. Flow of the application. This is the high-level architecture for our application. Whenever the client hits the query, it will go to the controller and it will take the data from the database and it will come back to the controller and give and send the back to the data to the client in the JSON format. By going to the next slide. From here onwards, my friend will continue the slide.
Thank you, Avindra. So as my teammate said, the start of the application will be from the program.cs files. So here in the program.cs files, we have a main method which will start the application. In the main method, we are calling the configure web host defaults, which will say that this application is hosting on the web, which we can use through the localhost server. So here we are calling our use startup method, which will refer to our startup.cs, which is by default available in this application. So there are a lot many things in the startup.cs. We are going to mainly we are going to enable the services here by using two methods. One is configure services, another one is configure. So in this configure services method, we are saying that services will be controllers will be enabled in this particular application, and this Swagger gen is particularly for authentication purpose, that is JWT authentication, that I will explain later. So these services also must be declared in this startup.cs. One more method will be like jw.yard authentication. This will also for using the JWT authentication, that also I will explain later. So other than that, we have three more services, that is add entity framework SQL server. As we are using the entity framework, we need to add this to the services. Parallelly, we can add different frameworks like normal MVC also we can add here, but we are using entity framework, that's why we added this one. And also this transient is for declaring the service life cycle. So we used a service folder here, which will be explained later. So this service folder we are adding in here as a transient mode. So whenever the user calls that services, then only it will initiate. That's why we added this transient. Other than this, we have two more scopes. We don't use that one. That is scoped one, and one more thing is static one. So this is the main thing which we are using in this particular code. So the context pool we need to declare for using the backend DB. So here this is the main context file which we are creating from the backend, because as we are using the database first approach, so we have to say that which database we are going to connect. This IMDb connection, we are already this variable we are sending the connection string in app.settings. So if you go to app.settings, let me go there. So already we have declared what server we are using and what is the database name and whether the connection is trusted or not. So we already declared here. This connection string name we are using in our startup.cs. So by using this one, we are establishing connecting from our .NET Core to backend database. Yep. After that, one more important method is configure method. This method will get called by the runtime. By using this method, mainly we are enabling the HTTP request pipeline. So first thing is we have to say whether the application is running in the development mode or in the production mode, that we can declare here. So we are saying that it is in development mode. Then we have to say that HTTPS redirection, which enables the application to use the HTTPS one. So this use cars is mainly used for the application to access for the Angular. So yes, it is a .NET application. So these services has to be consumed in the Angular. So we have to add this use cars. Otherwise, we can't use this in our Angular code. We can consume these web APIs in the Angular. So this is a must should. And coming to routing, this is used for routing purpose in the backend APIs. So authorization, again, this is used for our JWT authentication purpose. This one is mandatory. Without this one, it won't run. And Swagger is used for mainly, we integrate Swagger in our .NET code itself. This is mainly used for testing our generated web APIs in our code. And middleware is one more service layer that we are using here. And in the middleware, we are just using the JWT middleware that we use it for authentication. Other than that, we didn't implement any code. In the further assignment, we can add some other middleware services. And finally, we are using this as a endpoint. So these are the main things available in the startup. After startup, we mainly concentrated on, so as I said, we have two different phases, phase 1 and phase 2. Phase 1, we used the JSON data that we stored in constant files. And coming to the controllers, those are the same for both of them. So we just changed the return types. One is getting data from, so here you can see there are only 3 different APIs available for us. So this is the phase 1 application, which I will run and show you. So before that, I will comment out the existing phase 2, that is using the database. So I will show this demo at the end. Let me go to the PPT presentation first. So far we have used 3 main controllers in our application. One is get one, other one is movies, get movies by ID. The final one is get movies by year. So for these 3, we used our main controllers folder. Other than that, we have one more controller, that is authentication controller. In this authentication controller, we have mainly 2 different services. One is auth, and one more other one is get results. So this auth will test the JWT connection. If the connection is true, it will call the get result. It will show whether if the application has perfect valid connection, then it will show the success output. Otherwise, it will throw a error output. That's the 2 services available here in the controller part. Let me go back. So here is the list of the services we have in the controller. So this is the general flow of any controller. Usually we have in the MVC architecture or in NT framework also, we have a user, that is a client, will call the controller, and the controller will contact the database by using the model and get the by calling the request. Then we will get the response from the model, and that will be sent to our view or that client side. Then that will be displayed for us. This is the general architecture. So the middleware is the main thing. That we use it only for JWT now. Usually this provides a pipeline that supports the pluggable services. This pipeline is configured with one or more component. So if the request is coming to the first controller, that will send that request to the middleware component. That middleware component do some business logics, and also if there is further logic to be implemented, that will call another middleware. Based on the complexity of the code, the number of middleware services we can implement by ourselves. So these middleware components usually pass the request to the next component via request delegates, and each component configure a lambda that binds a request delegate defining the process and involving a next function. So this middleware is a software that assemble map into pipelines and choose whether to pass the request to the next component in the pipeline. It will actually validate that one, and it can perform work before and after the next component in the pipeline. So here in our mainly in this pipeline middleware, you can configure methods provided by the startup class. We can add services or MVC routings or custom services. For our application, we add a custom services, that is JWT authentication services, in the middleware folder that I already showed here. So in the middleware folder, we added a custom JWT middleware service. So this will invoke whenever we are calling our whenever we call the authentication controller, it will automatically call here. So in this middleware controller, we have one more method that will pass the context and token here that will validate that token. So it will call this method here. So usually what will happen means the username and password will be stored in the database, but we didn't implement the database for the login page because we don't implemented that generability in the Angular side. Only the web APIs we are implemented that one. So currently the username and password we gave like user and user that is stored in our user service. If you go to the implementation, so here the username and password is hard coded. For the next assignment, we are going to create a new table in the backend database, and we are storing the username and password dynamically in the database. For this assignment, we gave the username and password as user and user. So that is completely about the middleware. And coming to the models, model is an extended version of the entity relationship model, which specifies a conceptual model of data using various modeling techniques. So EDM supports a set of primitive data types that defines properties in conceptual model. So in this application, we have used the movies model. This is also like a entity framework only. So we created this model by using a database first approach. So we are not going to create any model class automatically once the database first approach model is called. So that is called by using one more command. So this is the entity framework. So the tables will be existing already. By using the entity framework, we are creating the context and entity classes dynamically. So this is the entity framework structure for the database first approach. So this is the main command that we need to run to get that database first approach, and we are dynamically creating the classes. So here we are giving the database name and the server name, and also we are giving where we need to create that particular model. So I am giving the directory name as models, and the project name we are giving. So in our directly coming to in our project, it will create a model folder. In that we are creating the model class. So this is the model class which is dynamically created. And also it will add one more thing, that is the IMDb database name context.cs. So here the in this context there are a lot of things happening. It will there may be some fields which are not mapping from our JSON to this context. Oh, sorry, that will sorry, can you see my screen? Yep. 1 second. So here we can dynamically add our release years. This context will be mapping the JSON files with the data page. So coming to next slide. So this is the integrating to our web API. So we are using our localhost colon URL name, and we are passing the specific movie details here. So specific web API details. One is movie by ID, one is movie by year. And so I will demo these applications as of now. So coming to authentication, here in this JWT authentication, actually this is the token which looks like. In this token, the red color will be the header part, and the pink color, this color will be the payload part, which is the actual information. Coming to the blue part, this is the main thing which we are using. So this blue part will be generated dynamically by using a security code. This security code is unique for every application, and it is much needed for maintenance of security. So here is the general flow of the authentication purpose. So first the client request will be calling, and if there is a authentication like a perfect DRB token, then it will call the if we need to provide the username and password here. If the credentials are valid, then it will return the success message, and we can access the client APIs. If the authorization is not valid, then it will return the phone or an error, and the browser prompts the credentials. So again, we need to give credentials, and we have to connect from back. So this is the general flow. And for registration, this one, as I said, the JWT authentication has to register means we need to add some things in the we need to add some configuration in our startup.cs that I explained previously. So coming to code, so here in the startup part, we have to add this add security definitions. This main method is Swagger generation, we add security definition, and we add security requirement for generating this AWT token in our Swagger also. So let me run the application and show the demo. First, I am going to show the application for phase 2 with the DB context. So I am using the Swagger right now. In the Swagger, so I can click on this one. If I click on try it, so I just put a breakpoint to check whether it is triggering this list or not. So if I click on continue, my data is loading. So I'm able to get all my JSON data. So my API is working. So I just want to add authentication now and need to check. So for enabling authentication, I need to add this one line here. So I'm just uncommenting this one. I'm saving it. Rebuilding. As I said, we didn't implemented this in our front end part. As of now, this is for backend authentication only. So if I try to access my web APIs, so now it is throwing authentication error. So we can't access without authentication. So for getting authentication, we need to provide username and password and get the token. So the username and password will be user. So once I click on execute, it will generate a token for me if the credentials are valid. So my credentials are valid, so that's why I got one token. So I need to use this token to authorize this application. So I have to go there, go to authorize. So yes, it is a bearer token authentication. I need to give bearer first, and I have to provide the token. Click on authorize. So now I am successfully able to connect to this one. If I give a try now for my application, like for my get movies, then it has to bring all the data. So now you see it triggered this application. So if I click on continue, so I'm able to get all my data. So this is the like availability authorization that we implemented for the backend. So let me connect to my front end, and let me show whether I can able to bring the data or not. So this is my front end. Let me run this application first. So it compiled successfully. So I can access it in localhost 4200. Yeah, sorry for the connection issue. So here in my movie controller, previously I just uncommented this authorize. So that's why I didn't get your data in my front end. So I just commented out it one. Now if I try to run my application, so I'm able to see all my movies information by default here. So if I try to filter out any previous filters, what we have the existing code before, I can see the list of the movies with the relevance on top of it. So if I click on any specific movie, it will navigate to that particular movie page, and it will show that information here. So other than this, I added one more filter, and I added one more API that gives the information regarding particular year movies. So if I select any particular year here and click on get movies, I can see only that particular year movies here. So this just for adding a new API, we add this functionality in the UI. For the upcoming project, we are going to add more components and more functionality into our front end also. So go back here. So in the code itself, so as I said, we need to enable these comments for getting authorization for the APIs. And this auth controller here we are passing. So here we are calling our generate generability token method, and also we created a inbuilt login model which we are using for passing username and password. Actually, once we created a login table in the backend, it will automatically generate a model in this model folder that we can show in next final project. So this authentication will create a new token for us, and it will return back to us here in the return token. And so before calling this one, here we are checking whether the username is valid or not. In this method, we hard coded our information. So as we don't have any username and password in the backend, we are just checking the user is equals in here in the service only. So that's the way we are getting authorized for this token. So for this is the application we created, and I demo both the phases for phase. So we just need to enable these comments for running the phase 1, and this is the phase 2 application, and we add authorization for the phase 2. So if we just uncomment this one, it will ask us to authorize in our Swagger that we can see here. It will ask us to authorize here. So this is our whole project. Thank you, Professor. Thanks for the time. One sec.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.